The air in the city was heavy with summer warmth, and the steady hum of traffic blended into the soft clinking of cutlery around me. I was sitting alone on the balcony of Luna's cafe, a modest little place tucked between boutiques and bookstores. The espresso in front of me still steamed gently. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to savor the peace, the quiet flicker of calm, before everything would shift. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw the name Daniel. A familiar chill crept through me. It wasn't the first time he'd called unexpectedly, but something in my chest tightened. Slowly, I pressed the green button and lifted the phone to my ear. "Elaine," he said. No warmth. Just my name. Sharp, deliberate. "I'm listening," I replied, keeping my voice even. "I'm calling to let you know. I want a divorce." There it was. No build-up, no apology, just cold, calculated delivery. "I've also sold the company," he added quickly, as if ripping off a second bandage. "I'm leaving with Camille. We're starting over. Somewhere warmer." Camille. He said it like I hadn't known. Like I hadn't seen the hotel receipts, the late-night texts, the shift in how he stopped saying my name like it meant something. I stared out over the busy street below, watching a mother adjust her daughter's sun hat while waiting to cross. The world hadn't stopped, but for a moment, everything in my world froze. I picked up my cup and took a measured sip. The coffee was bitter strong, exactly the way I liked it. "Congratulations," I said. Silence crackled on the line. "Elaine," he finally asked, like he hadn't heard me right. "If that's what you want," I said calmly, "then good for you, Daniel." He laughed a smug little chuckle that reminded me of every boardroom moment where he thought he was the smartest man in the room. "I didn't think you'd take this so easily. You do realize, Elaine, you have nothing left. I handled everything with the lawyers. The company's gone. I own most of the assets." Is that what you think?" I interrupted, light amusement in my voice. He hesitated. "It's already done." Maybe I said, setting my cup down. "Maybe you should take another look at the shareholder agreement. Or better yet, ask your lawyer to read the clause on transfer rights." His breath caught. I hung up. The cafe felt brighter now, clearer. The weight on my chest was lifting, not because he was leaving, but because I no longer had to pretend. Daniel thought betrayal was a finale. What he didn't know was that I had been preparing for this, planning, watching. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mara, my attorney. "It's done. He can't sell what he doesn't own." I allowed myself a small smile. He'd underestimated me, counted on the idea that I'd be too broken to fight, too shocked to resist. But what he didn't know was that while he was drafting exit plans with Camille, I'd been quietly restructuring ownership. Weeks ago, I had secured silent buyouts from key shareholders, transferring their stakes to a newly formed holding entity in my name. Legally binding, undisputable. I left cash on the table and walked to my car. The engine purred to life as I pulled onto the avenue, merging with the flow of early evening traffic. I wasn't going home to grieve. I was going to face him, to look Daniel in the eye and let him realize just how badly he had miscalculated. The man who thought he had it all figured out was about to learn something critical. I wasn't the woman he thought he left behind. I was the woman he should have never underestimated. The driveway curved like a question mark in front of the stone villa we once called home. A place that had been filled with laughter, late-night strategy sessions and dreams, built on coffee and spreadsheets. Now it was nothing more than a battleground. I stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the pavers as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the front lawn. My breath was steady, my pulse calm. In my hand was a leather case, holding something far more powerful than rage-proof. Inside the house hadn't changed. Same art on the walls, same scent of sandalwood from the old diffuser by the stairs. But the air was heavier, colder. I found them exactly where I knew they'd be. Daniel was sprawled in the armchair, legs crossed, sipping a glass of wine like a king waiting for tribute. Camille stood near the window, arms folded, her red blouse tight enough to scream ambition and insecurity all at once. The moment they saw me, the room stiffened. Elaine Daniel greeted, lips twitching into a practiced smirk. Didn't expect you to show up in person. Come to beg, I set my bag on the coffee table and sat down across from him unhurried. No, I said, unzipping the case. I came to inform. Camille shifted, clearly uneasy. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Inform, he echoed. About what? Without a word, I pulled out the thick manila folder and placed it squarely in front of him. His smirk faltered. These are shareholder transfer confirmations. Over the past 6 weeks, I've acquired controlling interest in Hensley and Drake Holdings. I now hold 61.3% ownership. Camille's brow furrowed. That's not possible. Daniel said I had it under control. Daniel cut in sharply, eyes locked on the documents. He flipped through the first few pages. His hands, I noticed, were trembling slightly. I gave you everything, Camille snapped, stepping closer to him. You told me she was out of the picture. I leaned back, watching them crumble. You see, Daniel? I said, voice level, while you were busy playing fantasy CEO with your mistress. I was quietly negotiating with the 3 silent partners. You forgot even held voting rights. Their shares bought, legally transferred, filed. Daniel stood suddenly, the glass clinking against the wood as he slammed it down. You're bluffing. I stood too, retrieving a notarized copy of the final shareholder agreement and holding it up between 2 fingers. Try me. Camille's voice cracked. You said she was weak. You said she wouldn't fight back. She didn't used to. Daniel muttered more to himself than anyone else. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. I built that company, Daniel. You may have smiled for the cameras, but I wrote every business plan, handled every pitch, cleaned up every one of your financial messes. You mistook silence for ignorance. That was your first mistake. He looked down, silent, his jaw clenched. You can't do this, he said, finally grasping for control. The papers. I already initiated the sale. The contracts are invalid without majority approval, I interrupted, and you no longer have it. The silence stretched. Camille backed away from him, her confidence draining by the second. You're finished, I said quietly, and you don't even know how bad it's going to get yet. He looked up, something flickering in his eyes. Not anger. Fear. I picked up my bag. I'll see you at the emergency board meeting tomorrow. Or not. Doesn't really matter. You're no longer required. With that, I turned and walked out the door, clicking shut behind me. Behind me, their world was beginning to collapse. Ahead, mine was just getting started. The next morning, the house was still quiet, when I returned not with hesitation, but with purpose. I knew Daniel wouldn't be able to sleep after last night. Men like him don't rest when their grip starts to slip. I entered the study where the floor-to-ceiling windows poured in the early morning light. Daniel was already there, hunched over a legal pad, his face drawn and pale. Camille wasn't in sight. Good. She didn't need to be here for what came next. He didn't look up when I walked in. Elaine, he muttered, voice low. Still pretending this is salvageable. I asked, setting another thick folder down beside the espresso machine he used to brag about. I thought we'd skip past the denial phase. He finally met my eyes. There was no smugness left, just a growing dread. "What is this?" he asked. "Proof," I said, flipping open the folder, "of financial misconduct, embezzlement, tax evasion, wire fraud, offshore accounts." He scoffed, but I could see his throat move when he swallowed. I stepped closer and pulled out the first set of documents, wire transfers, from our company's internal investment fund, $1.2 million siphoned across a dozen transactions. Over 3 years, each routed through layered shell accounts in the Caymans, Luxembourg, and Singapore. Small amounts over time, I explained coolly. "You were careful, but not careful enough. Your mistake was assuming I didn't notice when our budget for R&D started shrinking while consulting fees kept rising." His jaw tightened. I flipped to the next section, phony invoices for services from non-existent consulting firms. Vision Analytics, Pendleton Corp Delta Review, LLC. Each one was a ghost paper built to give him an excuse to move money. He stepped forward, trying to reach for the papers. I slapped his hand away. "No, you don't get to control the narrative anymore." He exhaled sharply. "You went through private financials. I didn't need to go through anything private. I was still on the accounts when you started moving company money. And remember, I used to run cybersecurity for Morrison Tech. I left breadcrumbs, just to see if you'd take the bait." Daniel looked away, running a hand down his face. "You don't know what you're doing, Elaine. You could be exposing yourself too. If the company falls, it won't." I said, slicing the moment clean, "because I've kept detailed records separate from your dealings. I've separated the clean from the corrupt. I've already submitted everything to the SEC. They have a full audit trail. Every transfer, every fake invoice, every off-the-books conversation." His face paled visibly. "There's more," I added, handing him a small flash drive. "Audio files. Your calls with brokers inflating our valuation to bait investors. Conversations with Camille about funneling money to a private villa in Marbella. I even have a recorded call where you told your partner, and I quote, 'No one will notice if we bleed it slowly.'" He tried to speak, but the words failed him. "I know every bank you used," I continued. "Every exchange platform. Even the fake crypto fund you tried to launder through." "Jesus," he breathed, staggering back into the leather chair. I leaned over the desk, meeting him eye to eye. "You didn't just steal from me. You stole from employees, from clients, from people who trusted you. And now, Daniel, you don't just face a divorce. You face federal charges." He looked up, his eyes wild. "You think this won't come back to bite you too? I've already protected myself," I replied. "But you'll be lucky if you get out of this without a jail sentence." He buried his face in his hands. I stood tall, watching the man who once believed he was untouchable shrink into a corner. "I didn't come to fight you, Daniel. I came to end you. With facts, with law, and with the truth you thought I'd never find." Then I turned and walked out, leaving behind only silence and his shattered illusion of control. The sound of my heels echoed down the corridor of Harrison and Vale's executive suite, once Daniel's prized domain. It had always been his playground, a modern office fortress, with frosted glass, brushed steel, and leather chairs that screamed money. Today, it would become his mausoleum. The receptionist glanced up nervously as I passed, eyes darting toward the closed boardroom door. Everyone knew something was unraveling, but only a few realized just how far the thread had already pulled. Daniel was inside pacing. Camille stood near the window, face tight with worry, arms crossed over her designer dress, like she could shield herself from what was coming. I walked in without knocking. No need for formality now. "What are you doing here?" Daniel barked, voice cracking. I dropped a crisp envelope onto the boardroom table. "That," I said, "is your official termination letter." Camille blinked. "Termination?" "You're done, Daniel. Your company accounts are locked, your administrative rights revoked. Effective as of 10 minutes ago." He scoffed and turned to his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. But the screen blinked red. Access denied. He tried again. Error account disabled. Camille stepped forward. "You're locked out." "But what does this mean?" "It means," I said calmly, "that the emergency board meeting happened this morning. We didn't wait for you. You've been officially removed as CEO and stripped of all decision-making authority." "You can't do that," Daniel growled. "I still have shares. I have influence." "Not anymore," I replied. "The board voted unanimously. I presented the full audit report, every financial irregularity, and the documents proving your misconduct. They didn't hesitate." Camille turned pale. "You said this was under control." Daniel ignored her. "You'll regret this, Elaine. You're killing the company." "No," I interrupted. "You already did. I'm trying to save it." At that moment, my phone vibrated. I glanced down a message from Mara. "Freeze confirmed. All transactions suspended. Bank accounts locked." I looked back up at him. "Your accounts. All frozen." "I worked with the compliance department and our financial institution this week. The evidence I submitted was enough to trigger a fraud protection hold. No more moving money. No more last-minute withdrawals." Camille clutched her purse tightly. Are we going to be investigated?" "Oh, yes," I nodded. "Federal authorities are already involved. The SEC, IRS, possibly even the FBI once they finish reviewing the encrypted data I submitted." Daniel's composure shattered. "You don't understand what you're doing. You're burning everything down." "No, Daniel," I said softly. "You already lit the match. I'm just making sure you can't walk away from the fire." Camille turned to him, face contorted in disbelief. "You lied to me," she whispered. "You told me we were fine, that you had full control." He didn't respond. She backed away, her voice rising. "I left everything for you. You said we'd start fresh, that the money was clean, that you were just cashing out smart." "It was supposed to be clean," he muttered. She wasn't supposed to know Camille turned on her heel, tears brimming. "I'm not going down with you," she spat. "You said you were the future Daniel, but you're just a fraud." She yanked open the glass door and stormed out, leaving only the click of her heels behind her. Daniel stood there, mouth slightly open, as if the exit had knocked the breath from him. I took a slow breath, savoring the moment. "You built a house of cards," I said quietly, "and now it's collapsing. One lie at a time." He looked up at me, eyes hollow. "What do you want, Elaine?" he asked. "What's left to take?" I walked to the door, pausing before stepping out. "Nothing," I said over my shoulder. "You already gave me everything. I just took it back." And with that, I left him alone in the empire he destroyed. Back in my apartment, the room was dim, except for the cold blue glow of 4 monitors lined along my desk. To anyone else, the wall of screens might have looked overwhelming, lines of code, financial spreadsheets, IP logs, and encrypted chat logs. But to me, it was clarity, order, power. I slipped on my headset and keyed in the final string of commands. I knew exactly what I was doing. This wasn't revenge. This was justice executed down to the decimal point. Before I helped co-found Hensley and Drake, I spent 7 years in digital forensics and cybersecurity. I'd helped Fortune 500 companies track rogue transactions and unmask insider leaks. So when Daniel started acting different hiding documents, shifting meeting invites to private lines, I didn't confront him. I embedded myself deeper, quietly, systematically. Over the last year, I had installed surveillance protocols within our company's financial architecture. No one noticed, not even Daniel, because it was all cloaked as part of a system update, something Elaine always handled. I recorded every bank transfer, mirrored every email thread, even set alerts on keywords like wire offshore and audit. He'd practically handed me the rope. On screen, a series of financial records loaded transaction IDs, recipient accounts, false consulting invoices. I clicked open a time-stamped audio file. Daniel's voice came through crisp and clear. We keep skimming little by little. No one's watching that closely. By the time it adds up, we're out. I shook my head slowly. He really thought no one was watching. I compiled the evidence, 3 digital folders each tagged and encrypted. One was labeled SEC, immediate action the second IRS, unreported income, and the third FBI, cyber fraud and racketeering. Within them, transaction histories, shell company links, forged signatures, and 24 call recordings. I uploaded each package to secure submission portals, double-checked the encryption signatures, and hit send. 3 government agencies would wake up tomorrow with a bombshell in their inboxes. But I wasn't finished. I accessed our internal system's back-end logging in through my administrative override. One by one, I initiated lockouts Daniel's company. Email terminated. All user privileges on the business banking platform revoked. The mainframe access used for share trading suspended pending review. A small ping sounded my compliance lawyer, Naomi, was calling. "I just got word," she said breathlessly. "The SEC's intake division confirmed receipt of your files. They're initiating a formal probe." That's when I replied, scrolling through an incoming alert from our bank. "IRS and FBI should confirm within the hour. You know this could get very public very fast," Naomi said. "Are you ready for that?" I watched the screen as Daniel's final login attempt failed. "I've been ready for months." Naomi exhaled. "Then brace yourself, because he's about to realize his world's collapsing." As I hung up, I saw another window open on screen. A system alert from our third-party financial auditor. Anomalous activity detected. Immediate investigation triggered. Perfect. Across the city, Daniel was probably pacing in his high-rise suite, calling every lawyer and advisor he had on speed dial. But none of them would be able to undo what I had just set in motion. This wasn't about hurt feelings or getting even. It was about protecting everything I had built, the people, the integrity, the truth. The keyboard clicked under my fingers as I uploaded a final archive to my personal drive, a backup of every document and message, time-stamped, signed, and secured. Then, I initiated a trace lock on all known accounts tied to Daniel. If he so much as tried to move money through a VPN or ghost platform, I would know. Because the thing Daniel never understood about betrayal in business was this real damage doesn't come from shouting matches or slammed doors. It comes in silence, through networks, through wires, through data. I stood from the desk and stared out at the city skyline, the towers glowing against the night. Justice wasn't coming. It had already arrived. The grand ballroom of the Lexington Financial Summit buzzed with anticipation. It was the largest annual gathering of investors, tech leaders, and venture capital powerhouses on the East Coast. Every year, The giants of industry filled these gold-trimmed halls to make deals unveil innovations and quietly judge each other's fall from grace. This year, the whispers were already circling. Something big had happened. Something about Daniel Hensley. Something about fraud. And I was about to hand them the full truth. I stood behind the velvet curtain backstage, reviewing the slides one last time. The massive LED screen beyond the podium flickered with the conference's branding, but in less than 5 minutes, it would display a very different narrative, one that couldn't be undone with PR. The host's voice rang out. "Please welcome to the stage co-founder of Hensley & Drake, Elaine Monroe." Polite applause echoed as I walked out in my charcoal gray suit, every step firm and deliberate. I passed executives who had once ignored me at networking events, men who had shaken Daniel's hand and never learned my name. But now every eye was on me. I stepped up to the podium, hands resting on either side, like I owned the room, because today I did. "Good afternoon," I began, voice clear and measured. "Today, I won't be presenting a product or a growth plan. Today, I'll be presenting the truth." A low ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Over the past year, Hensley & Drake has suffered not because of the market, not because of innovation gaps, but because of criminal deception committed from within. The screen behind me shifted. Slide after slide displayed documents, transaction logs, shell corporations' falsified invoices and internal emails. Daniel's name appeared again and again, signatures, memos, even audio transcripts. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The man many of you shook hands with, trusted, with your capital and partnered with for tech innovation, has been siphoning company funds into offshore accounts, inflating market value through false brokerage agreements, and laundering money through fraudulent consulting contracts. A stunned silence followed. Phones came out. Attendees tapped urgently, scanning news apps' messaging assistants. Evidence of these activities has been submitted to federal authorities. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have all been formally notified. Investigations are active as we speak. The room shifted. Shock turned to fury. People didn't just see betrayal, they saw exposure, risk. One investor in the front row stood abruptly and whispered something to his assistant. 2 others followed. I turned to face the screen, letting the next slide load a time-stamped audit trail, showing a $375,000 transfer from our R&D budget to a Cayman Islands account under Daniel's name. And just to be clear, I said, facing the crowd again, none of this was an accident. It was methodical, greedy, and reckless. Whispers turned into murmurs. Attendees exchanged glances. Some were visibly angry. Others looked like they'd just realized the man they called a visionary was a walking liability. From this day forward, I continued, Daniel Hensley no longer represents Hensley & Drake. He's been removed from his role, all access revoked, and the board is cooperating fully with investigators. I paused, scanning the crowd. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm here to assure you the company will survive, because I'm leading it now, and I won't tolerate another ounce of deception. Suddenly applause broke out. At first, 1 or 2 claps. Then more. The room shifted from shock to solidarity. They weren't just rejecting Daniel, they were validating me. As I stepped down, executives reached for my hand. Even Charles Renner, a notoriously cold hedge fund chair, gave me a tight nod. I dismantled Daniel's image in one public address, but more importantly, I reclaimed my own voice. The lie was dead, and the world finally knew who had been telling the truth all along. The television in my office played softly in the background, muted but unmistakable. A headline crawled across the bottom of the screen, like a final nail in a coffin. Former CEO Daniel Hensley, under federal investigation. Assets frozen, passport flagged. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching the footage. Grainy airport security camera stills showed Daniel in a blazer and jeans, nervously speaking to a gate agent at a private terminal in Miami. The timestamp was barely 4 hours old. I already knew what had happened. I just hadn't seen the footage yet. The agent had stalled. Daniel had been flagged by federal watch lists just hours earlier. His attempt to board a flight to Panama under a false alias had triggered every red light. When the marshals arrived, he didn't even resist. They slapped the cuffs on him right there in front of the hangar, sunlight glaring off the tarmac, as if to spotlight his downfall. Poetic, I murmured. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, the FBI liaison handling the investigation. We have him in custody. Official charges pending. Well played. I locked my screen and looked out the window at the sprawling city below. This wasn't just a victory. It was the end of the war. Daniel thought he could win with lies and betrayal. Across the city, another chapter of this collapse was unfolding. Lauren sat in the back seat of a taxi, hands trembling around her phone. The cab was headed toward JFK, her passport buried under a pile of designer makeup and unpaid credit card bills. She hadn't spoken to Daniel since the night before, since he told her to wait in the hotel while he handled the last-minute logistics. He never came back. She stared down at her screen, redialing his number. Again and again, straight to voicemail. Panic clung to her like smoke. Then almost on instinct, she scrolled through her recent messages and found my name. The last text she'd sent me hours earlier was still unread. Now she called. My phone lit up with her name, Lauren Blake. I hesitated, then answered. "Elaine," she said quickly, breath-catching. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but please listen. I didn't know. Not about all of it. I swear I thought it was just a simple divorce, a business split. I didn't know he was stealing. I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air, like wet laundry. "I want to cooperate," she rushed on. "With the investigation. I have documents, emails, proof of things he said. I can give you everything. I just need protection. A deal. Anything." Still, I said nothing. Let her panic rise. Finally, I spoke slow and flat. "Do you think that matters now?" Her voice broke. "Please, Elaine. I have nowhere to go. Everyone thinks I was part of this. I didn't even know about the fake accounts until yesterday. He told me we were building something together." "He built a lie," I said coldly. "And you cheered him on while he did it." "I made a mistake," she whispered. "We all do," I replied. "But some mistakes cost more than others. I'm scared. You should be." For a moment the line was just static and quiet breathing. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Will you help me?" I closed my eyes. No anger, no triumph, just the clarity of someone who had carried the weight of betrayal and survived it. "No, Lauren, I won't." Then I hung up. Outside my window, the city moved on trains. Rattled sirens echoed in the distance. People rushed toward lives that weren't unraveling. Lauren had picked her side, and Daniel had buried them both with it. The fall was complete, and I was still standing. 6 months later, the name Hensley and Drake was nothing but a memory buried beneath news reports, legal documents, and investor withdrawals. In its place, a new banner hung across the glass entrance of our headquarters, Phoenix Innovation Group. The logo, a rising bird with wings cut from digital circuitry, reflected the rebirth. It wasn't just symbolic. It was personal. We had stripped the company to its bones, severed every tie to Daniel's legacy, and rebuilt from the foundation up. Gone were the sham consulting contracts and fake advisors. In their place stood a lean, focused organization built around cybersecurity, data protection, and integrity-driven innovation. And I wasn't in the shadows anymore. I was the CEO. Standing in the sleek new boardroom, I watched as our global finance report updated in real time. Our valuation had surged by 180% since the relaunch. We'd just secured 2 major contracts with international financial institutions, and our name was already being whispered at the UN's Digital Security Forum. For years, I had been the architect behind the scenes. Now, I was the face. Reporters no longer asked about Daniel. They asked about me. How did you turn a scandal into a success story? What made you shift into cybersecurity? What's next for Phoenix? I always answered the same way. We rebuilt from truth. And truth is never outdated. Daniel, meanwhile, had disappeared from business news cycles and entered legal ones. He'd been officially indicted on multiple counts: fraud, wire tampering, money laundering conspiracy. The footage of his arrest went viral. The man, once dubbed the next Silicon powerhouse, now wore a wrinkled county-issued jumpsuit in courtroom sketches. Camille had fled to Europe, reportedly working as a bartender, under a different name. No one in the industry would touch her. Daniel's former allies gone. Business partners, silent. Every lifeline he had depended on had been cut. He wasn't just disgraced. He was alone. And I had never been more surrounded. My team was loyal, lean, and brilliant. Many of them had stayed through the storm, believing in me even when the headlines didn't. We launched a mentorship program for women in tech and established our own internal auditing system that was now being modeled by other firms. We weren't just surviving. We were setting standards. That afternoon, as the office cleared for the weekend, I stood by the window of my new corner office. Manhattan glittered below the lights of taxis and billboards, blurring into a river of motion and promise. I set down my coffee and picked up the engraved plaque on my desk. Elaine Monroe, founder and CEO, Phoenix Innovation Group. For years, I thought success meant building something side by side with the person you love. I thought partnership was sacred, that loyalty protected you. But I learned the hard way sometimes. The person beside you is the one holding the knife. Still, I didn't crumble. I didn't chase revenge with fire or fury. I did something stronger. I rebuilt. I outlasted. Because real power isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about proving you never needed them to rise in the first place. I looked out across the skyline, watching planes glide silently toward distant cities. Somewhere out there, Daniel sat in a holding cell awaiting trial. Somewhere else, investors were trading. Our stock students were studying our software, and young women were saying, if she can do it, maybe I can too. I smiled, not the smile of someone who'd won, but of someone who had earned every inch of her peace. From the ashes of betrayal, I hadn't just rebuilt a business. I had built an empire, and it was only the beginning.